And good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am Trinity Korth, Financial Services Solutions Advisor for the Center for Professional and Executive Development. And I'm excited to have you here with me today as we hear from Ann Martel. Before I introduce Ann, I'd like to share a few words about the Wisconsin School of Business Center for Professional and Executive Development, also known as CPED. The Center for Professional Executive Development offers programs and certificates that will give you the modern, relevant skills needed to advance your career. All of our programs offer interactive live learning sessions facilitated by instructors with practical business experience. CPED also partners with organizations to provide customized professional development programs, coaching, and consulting. For more information on the Center for Professional Executive Development, please visit our website at uwcped.org. If you have any questions you'd like to ask during today's webinar, you can submit those questions using either the chat or the Q&A buttons on the bottom of the Zoom webinar screen. We will post questions that are submitted during the Q&A at the end of today's webinar. I also want to mention that today's webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be made available within the next few days. And now I would love to introduce Ann Martel to you today. Ann is a passionate proponent of building business acumen and financial literacy for anyone looking to improve their performance. So thank you so much for being with us today, Ann. Thank you everyone else for joining, and I will hand it on over.
Thanks so much, Trinity, and welcome everybody. Glad to be with you this afternoon. As Trinity said, I am Ann Martel. I own my own business, Martel & Associates, but even more importantly, I'm a faculty member at CPED. I lead the sessions on financial accounting for non-financial professionals, as well as a financial acumen strategy session for their transition to executive management program, and a session on business strategy. So I do some work for CPED. I also do work for corporate clients, fulfilling my passion of hoping everybody understands how the language of business, this beautiful language of business, works. If you asked my mom, my 93-year-old mom would say, you know, she used to be an accountant. And that is how I started out my career journey. I started out many years ago as a lovely young graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, their accounting program. I did my internship at American Family Insurance and spent about 10 years of my early career there, and moved on to a variety of different organizations, large, small, for-profits, nonprofits. But along the way, understood that I have this very, very strong passion to help people understand how does a business work. I have found in my consulting and my facilitating and my training, you can be the best director of nursing, you can be the best VP of marketing, you can be the best customer service representative, but eventually somebody's going to put a budget on your desk and you need to know the numbers. You need to know the language of business. So that's been my background, and I love what I'm able to do and have done it for many, many years. So where are we going today? What are we going to be doing in our 1 hour that we have together? We are going to be looking at how do companies normally make money? Now, many of you might have a background in the financial institutions, a bank, fintech, insurance, any of those backgrounds. And companies that are not banks make money in a totally different way than you do. So we're going to explore that first, just to kind of give us a foundational area to kind of springboard from. Cash, however, is not profit. So I want to make that distinction in our segue into how does a financial institution make money? Because it's very, very different. And as a business organization, as a financial organization, if that's where you live, you need to know how your company makes money. You need to know how a bank makes money so that you don't become the next Silicon Valley Bank. More on that in a minute. Cash and your mother. Oh my goodness, what must that mean? Challenges in the financial industry right now, whether you are a banking institution, fintech, insurance, what are some of the challenges facing you that are a little unique to your particular industry? Where I want to finish up is, as a financial institution, for those of you who work in financial institutions, or maybe you're not in a financial institution, just understanding how your customers make money. So let's say you are in a banking environment, you're a commercial lender, or you're a trust fund advisor, or you are you're a personal lines advisor in an insurance company. Understanding how the people, your customers, how they make money can help you perform better and help your organization to greater success. We'll finish up with growth as the lifeblood that leads us into our questions and answers, and we'll be wrapping up around the top of the hour. So that's kind of where we are going in our agenda today. Silicon Valley Bank, SVB, that I mentioned. What is it and what happened? Well, Silicon Valley Bank was founded in 1983, obviously Silicon Valley Bank. And the specialty of Silicon Valley Bank was tech company startups. So young, blooming, computer, data-driven companies going to SVB to secure their money, to grow, to secure lending and commercial banking services. They provided almost 50% of the US venture-backed tech and healthcare companies, almost all 50% of their financing. They were shut down in March of 2023. The California Department of Financial Protection and Innovation shut them down. And they were also one of my former clients. Now, I'm not saying if they would have continued training their staff and their employees on business acumen and understanding the financials of SVB, that they would still be around in their format today. There were some things that happened at Silicon Valley Bank that will be kind of permeating and sprinkling through our hour together that really do impact the banking industry and are truly a challenge at this point in time. But I'm not going to be too modest. I think business acumen is really important. I think understanding how you make money and acting to improve the money-making process is the core of business acumen. And it's something that this is my passion, every person should aspire to, or should be interested in, or encouraged to learn a little bit more about. So with that being said, how do companies normally make money? Let's take our financial hat off. Let's take our banking or our insurance hat off, and let's think about, how do companies normally make money? Generac, wonderful Wisconsin company. Generac has had unbelievable success over the last few years. They make generators. They make generators for residential facilities, and they make generators for commercial purposes. They do a lot of other stuff in addition to that, but that's their bread and butter. That's where they came from. And if you're Generac and you're building a generator, you need materials. So you need steel and iron and all of that. You need materials to build that generator. And you need the people to build it, to put it together, to assemble it, to paint it, to test it, to make sure that it's working properly before it's ready to go to the customer and to be sold to the customer. Those are costs of the product, cost of the generator, product costs. Generac also has other costs to run their business, day-to-day operating costs. Things like research and development. Where's the next generator going to come from? How can we make them smaller? How can they be gas powered? How can they be battery powered? What's the alternative energy sources that we could use? A lot of different things that are going into research and development at Generac that aren't part of today's product costs. Generac also has costs for things like marketing and selling and paying the accountants, of course, and the lawyers. Don't forget about them. But all these other day-to-day operating expenses are instrumental for Generac to have to experience in order to run their business on a day-to-day basis. Now, obviously, Generac wants to figure out, okay, how much do we have to charge for our generators? What's our selling price? What selling price do we have to charge to cover all the costs of our business? So 3 rules of business for Generac. Number 1, know your costs. Know what it costs to make your product. Know what the other operating costs are associated with your business. That's rule number 1. If you don't know that, you will fail at rule number 2, because rule number 2 is charge more. You gotta price yourself at a price point that's going to cover all of your costs. And then rule number 3, and this is the big rule for today, making sure that when you sell a product, you get paid in cash. The cash gets harvested. Now, some businesses don't really have to struggle with this. You think about Walmart. You go to Walmart, you fill your cart up with all sorts of goodies for the summertime, and you go and either somebody checks you out or you go through the self-checkout. They don't let you walk out that store without giving them some form of payment. So they get their cash right away. But Generac, when they're selling either to a commercial operation, so they send them an invoice and they have to wait for the cash, or they might be selling all sorts of generators to a distributor like Home Depot, and they send an invoice to Home Depot and they have to wait until Home Depot pays them. So there's a lag between when they actually sell their product and get the cash. So for a non-financial institution, understanding the relationship of these 3 very important rules: know your costs, charge more, make sure you're pricing appropriately, and make sure you get cash. When you make a sale, you need that cash to continue this circulation of money within your organization, or you're going to be out of business really quickly. So that's just kind of the basics if you are a non-financial institution. Financial institutions are a little bit different. But I think I touched on something there. I think I touched on something that when I go and I'm leading sessions on the basics of accounting and finance, and I'm talking, leading my sessions on, I just finished up one at UW on finance and accounting for non-financial professionals. There seems to be a confusion on, well, isn't profit cash? So the slide I'm showing you right now is the roadmap of the profit and loss statement, also known as the income statement. Actually, it's also known as the statement of operations, the statement of activities, the statement of earnings, all sorts of the different terms for the same darn financial statement. You naughty accountants, how dare you name something so many different ways and expect us to understand what's what? But just be confident in the fact that this financial statement, the income statement, the P&L, the statement of operations, whatever you call it, it tells a story. It tells a story of what just happened operationally. So what did we generate from revenue? How many generators did we sell? At what price? What mix did we sell at? How many commercial generators did we sell versus residential generators? So understanding what's driving their revenue, and then what did it cost to make their products, that's the first stepping stone of determining the performance of an organization. And it's called gross margin or gross profit. It's a little milestone looking at, are we priced appropriately? Are we priced at a level to cover the costs of production? Or if you're a service business, the cost of your services. So if you're in the financial world, if you're in a banking world, and you're working with your customers, how are they handling this milestone? What are they doing to keep up with inflation, to keep up with rising material costs, to keep up with rising transportation costs, to keep up with rising labor costs? I've had customers that I've worked with where those costs are going up, and they aren't responding quickly enough with adjusting their prices. If they are able to adjust their prices and they don't, they're going to see a downturn in their performance. So understanding that relationship between how am I priced and what's the cost of the direct cost of my product or service is the first stepping stone in understanding profitability. And then, as I said, Generac has all sorts of other operating expenses, R&D, marketing, public relations, legal, accounting, all the other administrative costs, which brings you to operating margin or operating profit. How profitable on a day-to-day basis is Generac? And then finally, as you're looking through this story of Generac's operations for this month, this quarter, this year, on their income statement, the bottom line is called net profit or net income. And net margin, net profit, net income is looking at from an owner's perspective. After we take into consideration, what are we priced at? What type of revenue are we generating? How much does it cost for our product? What are all of our other operating expenses? So what's our profit on a day-to-day basis? And then, do we have to pay the bank any interest? Do we have to pay some taxes? Do we have other stuff that goes on? That gets us to our bottom line. So that's the story of profitability for a normal business, a non-financial institution business. But that does not mean that that's cash. Profit is not cash. Now, it can be an indicator of cash. It can say, hey, I'm very profitable. Warren Buffett, I almost said Jimmy Buffett, but Warren Buffett once said, give me a company that isn't profitable. Their income statement is loss, loss, loss. But if they have cash, I can run them forever. But give me a company that's very, very profitable, but doesn't have any cash, they'll be out of business by the time of the next payroll. Think Amazon. Amazon for years was extremely not profitable. They had huge operating losses in their early days as they were setting up this huge distribution system that is now the current Amazon and making billions of dollars. But man, they had the investors pumping in the cash. So profitability is not cash, and understanding that, especially in your customer's case, with what they're struggling with, and understanding how that might impact you if you're a bank, is an important aspect of understanding cash concepts for your business. Because what happens if Generac makes the sale, or this business that one of your customers, they make a lot of sales, but they never collect the money from their customers? They're not the Walmart. They can't stop you from taking their product and, hey, I'm going to pay you 30 days from now or 60 days from now. What if the customers never pay you? Or what if you spend all this money making all these generators, but never sell them? Abbott is a perfect example of that. Abbott Inc., out north part of Chicagoland area, Abbott pivoted very quickly during the pandemic and developed the rapid test, one of the main rapid tests that were used during the COVID testing uptick. Very successful. I mean, that rapid test really drove their profitability in 2020 and made them, they had a very successful year. 2021, still pretty profitable. 2022, profits started to tank. And they had made all these rapid tests, which were now sitting on the shelves. They weren't selling, they weren't, customers weren't needing them anymore. CVS, Walgreens weren't ordering them anymore. The government wasn't buying them anymore. So all of a sudden they had all this inventory that they spent a ton of cash on, but they couldn't sell it. So think about that for your customers. Do your customers, have they been building inventory because, oh my gosh, we've got supply chain and I don't know, I got to have some stock on hand because I never know if I'm going to be able to get raw materials to make my product. And now I've got all this inventory. That ties up cash. And if they don't have cash available and you're a bank, they, number one, may go out of business. And number two, they don't have cash to put into the bank. So cash is really important. What if I have inventory? What if I buy advertising services and I never pay for them? Well, that can conserve some cash. I don't advise it. Your advertising company is going to drop you like a hot potato, but it is a way to conserve cash. So understanding the cash implications of your customers, knowing that they could be very profitable, but very cash poor, is an important concept of understanding the business. So let's think about a financial institution. How does a financial institution make money? If you're a bank, let's say, all right, financial institutions are really different animals. Financial institutions, insurance companies, you guys get the money up front. The cash comes in the door right away. All right. So if you're an insurance company, the cash comes in the form of premiums. You're going to provide insurance coverage services throughout the next year. And hopefully you're not going to have catastrophic losses. And hopefully when you eventually do have to pay out losses and benefits, it's somewhere way in the future. And you've been able to invest that money, use some of it to pay your operating expenses, but invest the rest and have money to pay off claims when they come due. But what about a bank? A bank, the money comes in, so your depositors, whether they're individual or commercial, deposit money into the bank. And then that bank turns around and lends money out. So you make loans, personal loans, auto loans, mortgage loans. And what do those loans do for you? Those loans hopefully bring in income in the form of interest. Or if you've got extra money, you invest it in your portfolio. So let's think about that for a minute. Think about yourself if you are a bank, if you're in a banking institution, and you have made all sorts of mortgage loans over the last decade, let's say. And you're a pretty strict underwriter. Maybe you're a smaller bank and your underwriting standards are really high, and you're only lending and giving auto loans and mortgages to the cream of the crop. So the bulk of your mortgages are at an interest rate of, let's say, 2.5% to 4%. That's the revenue coming in. Well, what's happening to interest rates right now? Up, 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 up. So a lot of times your depositors are going to pull money out of the bank because you aren't able to keep up with 5%, 6%. You're not able to give 5.5% on a CD. You choose not to. Well, you're going to lose customers. Money's going to go away. Or you choose to pay 5.5% on a 18-month CD. And now your margins are narrowing because you're only getting in 4%. Your margins aren't just narrowing, they're eliminating. You're getting 4% on a mortgage, and now you have to pay 5.5% on an 18-month CD. You're in the hole. So rising interest rates have really had a huge impact on a bank situation. Same with insurance companies. Insurance companies are having the same issues. And that brings us to the challenges in the financial industry right now. What are some of the things that are really troubling? And I don't think we're done. I don't think we're out of the woods yet. Silicon Valley Bank, Credit Suisse were the first two. There have been other bank failures in the last year or so, but I don't think we're out of the woods quite yet. Why? Because I think cash, and cash being king, is going to impact what a financial institution is allowed to do. If you think back to 2008, so you go back to 2008, the last time that we had some significant upheaval in the financial industry. In 2008, that was when the housing market, the bubble burst in the housing market. And we had issues where some large lending institutions went under, and cash just, banks stopped lending quite a bit, and companies were kind of hoarding their cash and trying to self-finance themselves. And we saw a lot of upheaval in the cash industry, or in the banking industry. So cash being king here, think about that as a challenge, and what Silicon Valley Bank saw and what happened to them. So Silicon Valley Bank, in their downturn, had several things happen. to them. I already gave you one example. Mortgages, the mortgage revenue that you're generating on the interest on your mortgages that you've lent out, or your auto loans or your personal loans, it's set at this for 30 years at this really, really low rate, and now interest rates are going up. So that's just a basic, cash I got to pay out and cash coming in is just, there's a mismatch. What else happened to Silicon Valley Bank is, remember, they provided over 50% of the financing for small tech companies, healthcare companies. They didn't keep a great eye on what was happening to their customers. And a lot of these small tech companies were going belly up. The rising costs, things that were going on, COVID, all of the things that we have gone through in the last 3 to 5 years really impacted the customers of Silicon Valley Bank. So they a little bit started defaulting on their loans, but they were starting to really struggle for cash. So they were starting to pull cash out of their accounts at Silicon Valley Bank. And all of a sudden it became like a bank run. Silicon Valley Bank is like, oh crud, we have to make, give the cash, these depositors, give the cash, these our commercial customers who now are struggling for cash. So they're pulling cash out of the bank. And it's this huge vortex. It's this huge cycle. Remember the other thing that the bank can do with your cash. They invest it. And banks are pretty low risk investors, okay? They're going to invest in fixed income types of securities, bonds. And the bonds, when you invest in a bond, if you invested in a bond and you invested in a bond that was issued, 3 years ago, you were barely getting any interest on that bond as an investor. Going to hold it to maturity? Yeah, I'll get my face value back on the bond, but the interest rate's really low. Well, what's happening? Interest rates are going up. So those bonds that you're holding in your portfolio, that Silicon Valley Bank had in their portfolio, were not as valuable anymore, because an investor can go out and now they can invest in a bond that's paying 3%, 5%, 8%. So the bonds that Silicon Valley Bank were holding, their value in the marketplace started to crater. Add to now my commercial customers who are struggling for cash, who are having a downturn in their business, they're pulling cash out of the bank. Where does Silicon Valley Bank come up with that cash to make sure that they have cash available for these depositors that are starting to pull out? They've got to sell their investments. So they're selling these bonds at a huge loss. So it's just a vicious cycle. And that's what's really challenging in the financial industry right now, is rising interest rates, coupled with all the other things that non-financial institutions have to deal with: staffing challenges, labor rates going up, all sorts of inflationary pressures on the business. Plus, the impact of rising interest rates can really create a tenuous situation for any financial institution, whether you are a bank or an insurance company. So cash is king. Understanding where cash comes from. I love this quote. Al Sugar, cash is more important than your mother. I like that better than cash is king. I really like that. And I think, when you think about it, if you're in a big company, sometimes you probably never think about cash. I don't know if you've ever, let's say you're working for American Family or you're working for Generac, you're probably not really thinking, oh, well, what kind of cash do we have in the bank? But Al Sugar, who was an entrepreneur, and most entrepreneurs know this, is that cash is more important than your mother. You've got to have cash. I always say in my sessions, cash gives you the power to act. It gives you the power to do things. It gives you the power to launch that advertising campaign. It gives you the power to spend on research and development. It gives you the power to buy another business if that's how you want to expand. It's also so powerful, it can make you go out of business if you can't meet payroll on Friday. So cash is more important than your mother, but it really does give you the power to act. So when we're looking at the current challenges in the industry, and here's the summary of what we just discussed, that interest rate volatility is really a killer. Lending is slowing down. the housing bubble. I wouldn't say it's burst, but there is a downturn in people refinancing because interest rates are going up. So people cannot afford the mortgages that they once were able to afford. The portfolio volatility, the value of your bond investments during a period of rising interest rates, even if you don't have to sell them. So let's say you're a very healthy bank and you're not seeing the situations, you don't have all your eggs in one basket like Silicon Valley Bank did, where the tech companies and the healthcare companies that were really struggling out in the California area or throughout the United States, where they were starting to pull money out. Let's say you don't have that. You're good. Hey, we're good. Everything's good in my bank. We're fine. I would beg to differ. I would say that your portfolio, the money that you have invested in the bonds in your portfolio, your financial people are probably pulling their hair out because there are unrealized losses. Yeah, you haven't had to sell things off and realize that loss, but the value of your portfolio has definitely come down. And that can impact your ability for future growth and for future operations. Your commercial customers, the commercial business challenges over recent years and into the future, that bleeds into commercial real estate worries. Work from home, woo, work from home. Think about the occupancy and the vacancy rates in all commercial properties. If you are a banking institution that does a lot of commercial lending to commercial real estate firms, this might be the next bubble that's going to burst that could impact your business. Inflation and then the continued competition in the fintech world has really turned the financial institutions on their heads, where it's not bricks and mortar bank a lot anymore. It's not the BMO Harrises of the world or the US Banks of the world or the Wells Fargo of the world. I can go online to Voya, or I can go online and do all my banking online, or my credit card company, Capital One. Yeah, I can do a CD with Capital One now. I can do all my banking with my credit card company now. That competition is also impacting the fintech world. I know, pretty depressing, right? It can be a depressing situation. So let's move on. Let's move on just switch gears a little bit from how does your financial institution make money to how can you better serve your customers. And I'm approaching this webinar. When we designed this webinar, we designed it from an approach for people who work in the financial industry, work in the banking or the insurance world, and are servicing their customers. But even if you're not, if you logged into this webinar and you're like, I'm not in the banking institution, you're a customer of a bank, I would bet my bottom dollar, probably have some money in the bank there, or your company does. You want to know if your bank's going to go under. So it's a two-way street, definitely. So as a customer of a bank, all the things that we just talked about as worries in the banking institution, keep that in mind with who you bank with and making sure you have a reputable lender. But let's go back to the other side of the coin. If you are working in a bank, if you are working in a lending institution and something in the financial world, how do you better serve your customers? How can you be a true business partner for your customers? How can you serve them better? Because that's going to build loyalty, customer retention, and hopefully be a source of future earnings for your organization. Well, the best way to serve your customers, the best way, is to understand them better. Understand what their challenges are, understand where they are struggling, understand where they have maybe opportunities that are on the table that they don't know how to take advantage of. And also, how can they help, how can they manage those 3 rules of business, knowing their costs, charging more, and making sure that they are converting into cash. So I go back to this whole little diagram here that we started out with. How do non-financial companies make money? I want you, if you are working in the banking industry, to really think about this and think about this in regard to your customers. I want you to think about how they are profitable or not profitable? This is where you see a lot of challenges in your customer's business with the rising costs, whether it be raw materials, whether it be transportation, whether it be labor costs, and understanding as a business partner, not just, oh gosh, shucks, really too bad that, your labor rate has gone up from, used to be able to hire people at $12 an hour, and now you got to pay $15 an hour. From a more customer service approach of how can I help, I don't know, digitalize your business? How can I help you automate? What type of loan could we provide to you to automate your process so you can bring your labor costs down and you don't have the burden of these rising labor costs and staffing shortages? Think about McDonald's for a minute, if you will. Think about, for any of you who have gone into McDonald's recently and placed your order. If I would have been on the ball and had my producer get a poll ready, which I failed, I was going to ask in my poll, how many people have gone into a McDonald's and placed their order in person, to a person, or to a kiosk? And the studies are showing about 70% of McDonald's customers that come into the restaurant now order via the kiosk. Now, the kiosk technology has been around forever, been around a long time. Why is it all of a sudden it's kiosks everywhere in McDonald's? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Cost of the technology started to come down, so the cost of each individual kiosk is coming down. The cost of labor is going up. The availability of labor is strained. So now you've got this digital piece of equipment that people who have been locked up in the pandemic for a couple of years, and they're used to ordering on their phones and ordering through an app or ordering on their computer. Now they come into a McDonald's and they can boop, 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 boop into a screen, and the order gets placed. McDonald's is seeing great success. So as a banker, helping your customers understand, oh gosh, instead of just, oh geez, stinks that labor's going up and you can't find anybody to work, how can I help you? As your lender, what can I do? Can we do an equipment loan? Can we do, is it a working capital loan? What types of commercial lending things can you do with your customers to help be that better business partner? So McDonald's has seen the end of the story. McDonald's has seen not only is service great on their kiosk, but they're seeing an increase in revenue because the kiosk asks every time, wouldn't you like a chocolate chip cookie with that? Wouldn't you like a McFlurry? Don't you want to have a large? And people go for it. It's suggestive selling constantly. You can train the people that are taking the orders as best you can, but they're not going to do it every time. The kiosk does, and the kiosk never calls out sick. So just interesting story of understanding the operations of your business. So that's the first thing that you can do to really assist your customers. Understand how they can improve their margins. So help them identify what are their most profitable products or services. Where are they making the most profit? Is it, let's say you were the lender to Generac, are you making the most profit in commercial or residential? Are there different types of services that you could provide? Generac's really moving into grid services and providing electrical utility consumption, that they're expanding beyond the generator and going to the grid, and they're going into alternative sources of energy also. So where can they expand? What can your customers do to expand? Help them understand or ask that question. How much do you make on every unit that you sell? Getting them thinking about margin. What do we sell the most of? What's the most profitable? Are our costs growing faster than our revenues? And what can we do to mitigate that? The McDonald's question. Labor costs are going up. Can we automate a piece of our business to slow the cost of our product or service and get it more in line with our revenue? What costs might be variable? What costs might be fixed? These are all things that can be asked of your customers to help them manage their business better. And I don't, I think it's interesting because I've worked a lot with nonprofits. I've provided consulting services. I've helped them with training and things like that. And I know nonprofits always get a little nervous about, we should be making a profit. So if you're in a nonprofit business, I want to introduce you to Sister Irene Krause, the CEO nun. Now, Sister Krause made the most famous comment that I love with regards to a nonprofit. This is from an accountant, so I set the bar low. Sister Irene, she believed that any nonprofit has to have strong fiscal management, not just charity. She was a CEO of a healthcare institution, but her famous tagline was no margin, no mission. And that's true whether you are a for-profit or a nonprofit company. You want to make sure that you are operating profitably, or that will impact the cash flow into the business. And eventually you will be out of business if you can't provide that margin, that gross profit, that operating profit. All right. Other things that you can help your customers with as you are helping them become more profitable. What's the deal with inventory? Do you want more? Do you want less? What do you want? This has been a sticky wicket over the last couple of years because we've had so much in the way of supply chain disruptions. Used to be pre-pandemic, used to be JIT, 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 just in time, just in time. Now it's JIC, just in case. I see companies building their stock of inventory, their stock of raw materials, huge, just building it up. Because you never know, we might run out. That supplier that we used to get it to us in 48 hours, they can't get it to us anymore. We have to wait weeks and then we can't sell our product. I get it. But being conscious in working with your customers, being conscious of the fact that inventory eats up cash. It eats up cash like a ding dong. It just consumes cash. So you got a customer coming to you, they need a working capital loan. They're having a hard time with cash flow situations. They come to you and they say, look at all the receivables I have and look at all the inventory that I have. As their partner, understanding, is there a better way for them to manage their inventory? And the cycle, it's not about how much they have, it's about how fast it moves. Understanding this cash conversion cycle. So when you've got cash tied up in your business, all right, when you're purchasing raw materials from your suppliers, and then you put those, your customer puts those materials into work in process, and finally gets to the finished goods, that's the money that's tied up in inventory. Then they sell it to their customers, who hopefully pay them at some point in time. They don't pay them right away all the time, but they do pay them eventually. And then the cycle starts all over again. You got to pay your vendors and off we go. Well, somebody who's looking at trying to pay all your other expenses of operating your business, when you got a bunch of money stuck in this cash conversion cycle, you're going to have liquidity problems. And you're going to be going to your bank, hey, I need a line of credit. I need a line of credit to help me because I've got all this cash tied up. Helping your customers understand the concepts of the cash conversion cycle, and can we get leaner? Can we get leaner in these areas by selling more, moving the inventory out of your warehouse? Can we collect faster, days sales outstanding from our customers? Can we manage our costs better? What's fixed? What's fixed that your volume isn't going to really impact that versus variable? And obviously margin. Are we the bank that has the interest coming in on the mortgage at 4% and costs going out at 5%? Businesses struggle with the same challenges. Do you have inventory that costs you more than what you can sell? Stop selling it. So those are some things that are how you can help your customers better. Growth is always the lifeblood of where you want to go, whether you are a financial institution or you're working with your customers and as that business partner, helping them grow. From a financial institution situation, growth is the lifeblood of where you're going to be going. And growth needs to come from some fairly innovative places in your organization. From a banking perspective, let's say, you're struggling a lot. Used to be that you were charging fees for everything. You go to the ATM, you pay a fee. You do a wire transfer, you pay a fee. You get an overdraft, you pay a fee. You fee your customers to death. And all of a sudden, some of your competition is coming to the table with no fees. Okay, well, I want to compete, so I get rid of my fees, but you're getting rid of an entire source of income. How do you replace that? Where can you get additional revenue streams? And I'm just using fees as an example, but really looking at the basic foundation of your business. And where could we expand? What are some innovative ways that we could see in selling our services and selling them as something that customers are willing to pay for? That's the hard part, because you're competing with all these other financial institutions. How do you compete and offer and differentiate yourself in a way that customers are willing to pay? Whether it's different services, whether it's acting more as a business partner or a consultative type of an arrangement, whether it's how you're investing and what you're investing in. Taking on more risk in your portfolio is not usually a great thing to do, but sometimes it might be something that can help you generate a little bit more revenue from that stream. And there's a lot of different ideas. One of my favorite simulations that I run, I've been running it for the past couple of years with credit unions, is it's a banking simulation. And you make all these decisions of, well, what if we do this? And what if we get into more, wealth advising? And what if we get into high income earners versus commercial lending? Where do we find our sweet spot and survive? That's identifying those paths to growth are important. We see a lot in the banking industry that growth is happening through mergers and acquisitions, but there are other alternative ways to grow. But what about your customers? All right. Don't just approach growth as an assumption, but a well thought out decision. Darden Business School professor, I like this quote. So what do you need to be able to grow from your perspective or your customer's perspective? Is it something, are you just going to focus on the top line, selling more volume, increasing our prices? How do we do that, but still maintain profitability? Do we innovate? Do we have new products? Do we have new services? That's great. Your customers are always asking for more, but are they willing to pay? That's always going to be your bottom line question. Are they willing to pay? How do you permeate market share? If you're a small regional bank, a lot of times permeating your market share is through mergers and acquisitions. But maybe you don't want to go that route, or maybe you don't want to be acquired. I live in Mayville, Wisconsin. We've got a small bank here, Mayville Savings Bank, that has been around forever. And I live in a small town, so I talked to the president of the bank and everything. And it's like, how do you survive? How do you guys survive and thrive in this very competitive market? And there are some things that they do whether it's customer service or really hands-on lending that have helped them survive in this tumultuous time as a financial institution. So building market share isn't just about getting bigger, it's also about getting better. New ideas and capabilities. What can you do better? What can you automate? Understanding the demographics in the banking industry. What do the Gen Z, X, Y, what do they all want versus the aging boomers? Me, what do we want? And how can you best service that? It's an exciting time. It's a tumultuous time. But one constant throughout time is the power of cash, and the cash giving you the power to act. I'd like to wrap up right now, and I see that I do have some questions and answers and chats. Brooke, do you want me to take care of them, or
Hi.
Trinity?
Yeah,
Wow, sorry.
No, you're good. Okay, well, thank you so much, Anne. That was fantastic. One of the first questions we have is, as a public health consultant by training, I'm interested in developing my business acumen skills. What are the steps I should take towards achieving this dream?
Oh, I love that question. Right up my alley. There's a lot of things that you can do to build your business acumen. As a consultant, you're learning through the school of hard knocks. That's one way of learning, but there are a lot of different things that you can do. Obviously, you can take my class at CPED, Finance and Accounting for Non-Financial Professionals. But let me show you two books that I really like in my library here, if I can find my other one that I want, which I can't. All right, we'll go with three of them, and I'll just tell you what the other one is. The first one is What the CEO Wants You to Know. This is a book by Ram Charan, and I'll put this into chat so you can find it. And it's a really good book, I think, from both an entrepreneurial perspective, but also if you are within a large organization. It's a good read. It's very small, see, very thin, but it's a good read, and it helps you think more like the CEO. Seeing the Big Picture by Kevin Cope. Seeing the Big Picture is another really good book. This one is a primer on business acumen. It really looks at the 5 components of business acumen: growth, cash, profit, people, forgetting what the fifth one is, assets. And then it gives you a kind of a primer on financial statements. So this one's really good also. And then the third one is Ownership Thinking by Brad Hams. Ownership Thinking is looking at, as a leader, if you're a manager or a leader in an organization, and I know your background is consulting, but this would be a good one for even somebody in a larger company, thinking like an owner, thinking like an entrepreneur, and what's important to the entrepreneur. So I'll put those 3 things in chat after I finish answering some questions.
Thanks, Anne. I jotted those down. I'm looking forward to checking those books myself.
Oh, awesome.
Okay, the next question is, do you please mind giving a definition of a bond? I'm a layman. Thank you.
Oh, I like that idea. So, okay, so there's 2 different ways that you can invest. Well, 2 basic ways. There's a lot of ways you can invest, but 2 of the most basic ways that you can invest your money and how companies can raise money is through bonds and stocks. So stock investments, if I'm Ann Martel Associates and I decide I need to raise some money to fund, I want to go and acquire another company, I can offer shares of stock to all of you that are on this webinar. And you will pay me a certain amount, let's say $50 a share. I get that money and you get a share of stock. Now, what does that share of stock entitle you to? You have an ownership share in my business. It's not a guarantee that you're ever going to get that money back, and I may go belly up tomorrow and you're out your money. So stocks are a little risky, all right? But I could be the next Amazon, and your stock down the road could be worth $500 a share, and you retire a millionaire. That's the upside of the risk. That's the return on the risk. So stock is a way of investing your money. So banks, when they get money in, they can invest in the stocks of another company, but they don't want to do the real risky ones. They want to invest in like the General Motors and the blue chip stocks where they know they're going to get a return. Bonds are also called fixed income securities. So again, I'm Ann Martel. I want to raise money for my company. And instead of issuing shares of stock, I decide I'm going to issue bond investments. So a bank can buy my bonds. And let's say all of you invest $1,000. You each buy a $1,000 bond from me. I got about 20 people in this seminar. I'm going to raise $20,000 from that. You get, with your bond, you get a promise from me that 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road, I will pay you back. Bonds mature. So I will pay you back the face amount of your investment. And in the meantime, in the next 5 years or 10 years, whatever type of bond I'm issuing, I'm going to pay you some interest. I'm going to pay you 3%. All right. What makes the bond market volatile is if I'm paying you 3% and somebody else, everybody else is only paying 1%, that bond I'm giving you is way more valuable. You could sell it out on the bond market. There are bond markets out there. You could sell it on the bond market because, wow, I'm getting 3% interest and everybody else is only getting 1%. We're in the other side of the boat right now, where a lot of companies and a lot of government agencies have issued bonds and they're paying really, really, really low interest. They were issued 3 to 5 years ago. They're paying very low interest, and now interest rates are going up. So those bonds that were issued 3 to 5 years ago are not as valuable out in the bond market anymore. So they've taken a loss in value.
Thank you so much, Ann. Let's see. What impact has staffing challenges had on business in general, or in particular, the banking industry?
Well, staffing challenges, I hear it all the time. I mean, most companies are really struggling with staffing challenges, and it impacts a business in a couple different ways. Number one, just getting qualified staff is very difficult, and keeping qualified staff. So recruiting and retaining continue to be a challenge for everybody across the board, including the banking industry. Pay rates and benefit rates have also been going up. So that pushes up into your profitability, whether you're a banking institution or not a banking institution. Where it's really had the impact on operations, it kind of goes hand in hand with the example I gave about McDonald's, where as you have this staffing challenge, whether it's labor costs or labor availability, it pushes businesses more to digitalization. So in the banking industry, you've seen a lot more into the online portals and online banking and being able to do a lot more online. I know I'm a customer of Summit Credit Union. And so if I'm going to make a deposit, normally I'm doing it on here, but if I can't do it on there, I go to the drive up and I'm talking to a teller that's not there anymore. There's centralized tellers. I'm putting my stuff in, but the teller isn't in the building anymore. They're somewhere else. So using digitalization and using automation are two huge areas where we've really seen the impact of the staffing shortages, both in non-banking as well as banking industry.
It looks like we have time for one more question here, I believe. And what are the biggest challenges you see facing a financial institution like a bank or credit union for the future? That's a good one.
Yeah, there are a lot of challenges going on right now. I think the uncertainty in the markets right now is the biggest challenge. As I said, I don't think we're out of the woods quite yet with the volatility. The Federal Reserve Bank just put a pause on raising interest rates yesterday, but it's just a pause. It's not a stop. And if inflation starts to ramp up again, especially in an election year, if you've got all of a sudden you've got rising prices, the Fed is probably going to come in and try to raise interest rates to slow down the economy. But that could have a really bad impact also, because it could throw us into a recession. And that's going to be a challenge in that there will be, job losses usually come along with a recession. I'm still thinking the housing market is probably the bubble might burst. It's probably going to burst in the next 2 to 4 years. And that will have an impact on the banking institution, as people might get into a situation where they're underwater in their mortgages again. And if we see the same thing that we saw in 08, 09, where people just started walking away from their mortgages, that could have a huge impact on the financial banking world.
Well, thank you so much. And also thank you everyone for your comments. And we'll definitely check those out. So many kind words that were shared today. We had a wonderful day today with everyone. And before we end, I wanted to let you know that CPED is ready to help your organization and your team members improve their financial and business acumen, sales and marketing, and strategy. I would love to set up a discovery session to talk with you about our consulting, coaching, and professional development programming and these areas of focus. My email is on this slide, and I look forward to further exploring all these opportunities with your organization. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Ann, and everyone, make it a great day.